Are you on the hunt for a bottle of Shenk's or Bombergers and wondering whether or not these rare whiskeys are really worth their price tag? Well, I was lucky enough to get my hands on a bottle of both, and I'm going to help answer that question. My name is Brandon Spinner, and you have stormed yourself into the Whiskey Weather YouTube channel, where it is always whiskey weather. In this video, I'm going to taste Shenk's and Bombergers and judge them on 5 different criteria that all add up to a 10-point rating scale, which I like to call the lightning count. And from there, we'll see how they stack up to other bourbon and whiskeys that I have reviewed and see whether or not they're whiskeys that you should spend your hard-earned money on. Before we get started, I do want to ask you the question of what is your favorite distillery? There are tons out there. Is there one that you think is underrated, or are there a couple that you think that I need to try? Drop those in the comment section below, and let's get started. Shenk's Homestead Sour Mash Whiskey and Bomberger's Declarations Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey, both of which you know as Shenk's and Bombergers. They are part of Michter's Distillery's Legacy Series, and since 2018 they have been an annual release. So the names of these actually come from the name of the old distillery. So back in, I believe, 1756, John Shenk started the distillery, calling it Shenk's Distillery. And then from there, I believe it was 1860 or thereabouts, Abraham Bombergers took over and named it Bombergers. And then in the 20th century, it was named Michter's Distillery when it was all back in Pennsylvania. And now today, they are right there on Whiskey Row in Louisville here in Kentucky. We have a Kentucky Straight Bourbon. One thing of note, this is Kentucky Sour Mash Whiskey. Doesn't mean it's a bourbon. Could be made up of many different mash bills, or it could be just made up of many different grains. Now, I have bottle 311 out of 2,677 from batch 24E2229, distilled and bottled in Kentucky. The Shenk's this year, as always, comes in at 91.2 proof. And as I mentioned, it is a sour mash whiskey. So, Michter's themselves, they don't tell you what the mash bill is, other than the fact that this year they've done things a little bit different. They've got a malted rye within this, as well as a caramel malt. Now, when it comes to the price point of Shenk's, MSRP is $110. I got this at the party stores in Kentucky for right at $120, so a few dollars above MSRP. And I think on the secondary market, it trades right around $150, or some people are paying that for the bottle itself. Let's jump right into it. I'm going to go Shenk's, then Bombergers, and then we're going to do something at the end that you may have seen Jason from Mash and Drum do, which is called a Shenkberger. But before we get to that, let's see how Shenk's stacks up. So on the nose, it's cherry. It's not real strong. There's a little bit of the caramel. I will say the first time I dove into this, the nose to me was lacking. There's a little bit of like an acetone smell to me. Like almost nail polish remover. Very sweet as I go to it a couple times. Cherry and oak are the first two things that jump out. I wouldn't call it a classic bourbon nose, but... Oh, and before we get going, I do want to say a big thank you to my buddy Derek, who dropped the super thanks in one of my previous videos. Big shout out to Derek. You can do that, and I just started something new. This one's for you, Michael Smith. That join button below, you now can join the YouTube membership of the Whiskey Weather YouTube channel. If you're not able to join Patreon, or if you want to join both, you can find the links in the description below. So, Shenk's. Still that acetone on the nose, a little metallic-y almost. It's an okay nose. So the nose is the first thing I rate. I'll give it a 1.2 out of 2 on the lightning count. So 1.2 out of 2 on the nose. Let's dive into the palate. Okay, it's called a sour mash because of the way it's made. There's a little bit of a sourness to it. I wouldn't call it great in my mind. Right off the bat, so sour, and then there's a little bit of bitter. That malted rye, you can kind of feel it. It's soft. The mouthfeel itself, at first, feels a little watery, and then it gets tingly. The second thing I rate whiskeys on are the flavor. I don't think that there's a ton of flavor here. I was hoping for more. We're going to give this a 0.9 out of 2. So 0.9 out of 2 for the flavor and a 1.2 on the nose. So the caramel's really coming through now. As far as the finish, it's okay. I don't think it's great. It kind of fades fast. I'd look for a little more. We're going to go with a 1.0. So we got a 1.0 on the finish. The next thing up is the mouthfeel. It's a little buttery. I'll give it that. There's some butter right there, and then it starts to get some tingle. I'd say the best part of all of this is either the nose or the mouthfeel. I'm going to rate that right at 1.2 as well. So I don't think that this is amazing. I was hoping for more. The value out of this, $110. I really wanted these bottles. Here's the issue. I don't think I would pay $110 again for the Shenks. So for that, I'm going to give it a value of a 0.7. So all in all, the final lightning counter score from the Shenks Homestead Shower Mask. Shower Mask. That's the second time.
Yeah, shower. I need one of those.
Get your head out of the gutter. I'm just showering it with some effusive dislike because all in all, the final lightning counter score is a 5.0 out of 10. That's average. This is an average whiskey, and at $110, I would probably pass on it again. In fact, I've passed on it already. Had a store reach out to me saying that they had it in stock, and I just said, no, it's okay. I will pass. So that is Shenks. Let's jump right in to Bombergers. This is a Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey. There is no age statement on this, but by rule and from the TTB, Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey. Straight bourbon whiskey, since it doesn't have an age statement on it, means it has to be at least 4 years old. Bombergers, a 4-year-old, if not greater, Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey. I believe they also used the malted rye within this mash bill this year. I've bottled 1,781 out of 2011 from batch 24F2307. Again, the 2024 release comes in at 108 proof, just like every release before that. And this has an MSRP this year of $120, which both are up a little bit higher than they were in years previous. As for the nose, right off the bat, that has a lot more of a classic bourbon nose. Candied fruit. That cherry and oak is there, but it's a sweeter, just more full in-depth cherry and oak. So far off the bat, the nose on this is way better than the nose on this. But who knows how it's going to taste. That was a bad joke. I apologize. So there's some brown sugars that come through. If I reach for it, a little bit of a cola, a Coca-Cola. Good nose, 1.5 out of 2. But what's it taste like? Keeps going. I will say already, I'm a lot bigger fan of the Bombergers than I am of the Shenks. Where it rates though, that's going to be a different story. As far as the Bombergers, the flavor is there. Classic bourbon to me. Very good on the bourbon flavoring. I'm going to give the flavor a 1.5 as well. Very happy with the flavor. I wish there was probably a little more sweetness. It does get a little more bitter at the back end. But overall, I'm happy with it. There's that soft feeling with the malted rye part of the mash bill. I will say it's very similar to the Milam & Green Bottle & Bond, where I get a little bit of that softness and that maltiness, even a little bit of chocolate coming through as well. And that chocolate is more of a dark, bittery chocolate, not as sweet, but there are some sweet cinnamon, I'll say some red hots, like a cinnamon red hots on the back end. Overall, I will say the finish itself, it's still talking to me. We're also going to give that a 1.5. So 1.5s all across the board so far. So the mouthfeel itself, I think this is a little bit more of a buttery mouthfeel. This has more of a tingly mouthfeel, if that makes sense. Probably the least favorite part of this all, but I still will give it a 1.4. So it's not the best part of it. I think the nose, the flavor, and the finish are all very good when it comes to this. The mouthfeel, it's okay. The finish still talking to me. Man, maybe I underrated the finish. No, I'm going to go with 1.45. So now we're talking value. This one, I think, is a lot higher of a value than this. This is higher proof. You definitely tell it. 108 to 91.2. So if you're a higher proof fan, I think this one's going to be your game to play no matter what. But when I think the value is there, $120 probably the most I'll spend for this. So the value, it's right on par. I'm going to give that a 1.3. So altogether, that comes out to a total lightning counter score of 7.2 out of 10, which falls into the very good category. And that's where I would put this. It's a very good bottle of bourbon this year. I enjoy the Bombergers, of course, a little more than the Shenks. Whether or not that is something that fits your palate, of course, you be the judge of that. But if you've enjoyed some of my previous reviews or have lined up with some of my reviews, I think that the Bombergers is going to be the one to go with. So now let's do what we call the Shenkberger and see what this looks like. Ooh, it's butterscotch right off the top. Butterscotch and caramel. Like the first thing I think of is like a butter beer from Harry Potter.
Expecto Patronum!
Yeah. Now I'm getting those like butterscotch candies that your grandma would have in a jar. That caramel really starts to come through. Shenkberger's nose is probably better than the Shenk's nose, in my mind. That cherry doesn't really come through, though. It's wild how that changes. Nope. One more, just for research purposes. I don't like it. Very metallic-y, just like I said with the nose here. All in all, I'm going Bombergers over the Shenks. I will pass this up. I would probably buy another one of these. I did enjoy the 2023 version that I was able to try at a local bar as well. A lot of the times, folks, what I'll tell you is if you got a chance to try it at a bar first, I would do that. Spend $25 or $30 on a pour. I think I spent $18 on a pour of Shenks from 2023, which I thought was really good. I don't think the 2024 is worth grabbing, personally. I love what Michter's does, but I think that the mix with the caramel malt maybe this year, just a little too much. Bombergers takes the cake and wins it for me. As far as how it rates up against some other bourbons that I have done, the Bombergers is right up there, I think just behind the Barrel Craft Spirits Batch 36, but I think they're both very good, and I think they both give you a little bit different palate and a little bit variety and a little bit more depth on each one that you may want to try. If you did enjoy this video, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button. And the best way to help support this channel, not only by joining the Patreon, which I'll give a big shout out to all my Patreon members. Thank you to each and every one of you. But also by sharing this video with one of your friends who is a bourbon lover or a whiskey lover. That would be the best way to help support me outside of hitting that subscribe button. As I always say, it is always whiskey weather. Just please remember to be safe and responsible. If you enjoyed this whiskey review, you're going to love more of my whiskey reviews, which you can find right there up in the top right. I leave you with this. It's always whiskey weather. Now go have a great day.